I'm pregnant. Don't come back.
What?
Didn't you hear me? I'm pregnant with John's baby.
That can't be.
Hazel, it's your fault. You were busy taking care of your mom, leaving your husband all alone. You brought this on yourself. Mary said this with a triumphant look. But I didn't flinch. I took advantage of her "don't come back" remark.
Really? I'd be happy to.
My unexpected reaction left John and Mary stunned. Hazel, what are you talking about? Aren't you mad that I cheated? Well, I was shocked at first, but I'm not mad. Besides, I've got a new place now.
A new place? What's that?
Yes, I have somewhere else to go. I can leave John, whom I no longer trust, to Mary. That's what I whispered to myself. And, little did they know, a huge disaster was waiting for them. I'm Hazel, a 43-year-old housewife working in construction. I've had a childhood friend named Mary. We've been playing together since we were kids. But by middle school, we both became pretty wild and ended up like delinquent friends. This lasted until we graduated high school, but as adults, we lived completely different lives. I hated studying as a kid, but in my 20s, I worked hard to get qualifications while working. This paid off, and my career took off in my 30s. Meanwhile, Mary spent her 20s and 30s just having fun, saying it's a loss not to enjoy life. So there we were, past 40, both unmarried, me and Mary. But Mary didn't seem too worried. Unlike her, I was raised by a single mom after losing my dad early. I wanted to get married and give back to my mom. At work, there were many men, but they were mostly married. I casually asked my boss if he knew any good single men. He introduced me to a single guy around my age who was a friend of his. He is John. 2 years older than me, runs a construction company. He looked serious and well-mannered. Running a company inherited from his parents, John was always focused on work, like me. He, too, had been busy working and earning qualifications, which seemed to have kept him from being very interested in marriage until now. Having common interests, we hit it off and continued dating. After a year, we promised to marry each other. I told Mary about my engagement.
Really? That's great, Hazel. Congratulations.
Thanks. Sorry I'm getting married before you.
Don't worry about it. Just be happy.
Mary said, genuinely happy for me.
Thanks a lot. You must come to the wedding. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
After telling Mary, all that was left was to prepare for the wedding. Tomorrow, I'll be visiting John's childhood home for the first time. I was excited and felt my heart dance with joy. However, I soon had to realize that my joyful mood was only temporary. The next morning, I got ready with determination, preparing myself by that morning. John's childhood home. I wondered what it was like. Though it's called his childhood home, John's parents had already passed away. So, it's actually the house where he currently lives alone. Nevertheless, I was curious about the environment he grew up in. I had wanted to visit his house before, but he never invited me. His house seemed to be quite far from mine, located at the foot of a mountain. I have a car, so I planned to go there directly after getting the address, but John offered to pick me up since it was a hard-to-find place. While driving, John said a bit sheepishly,
"Well, it's quite rural, so you might be surprised." "No, I prefer quiet places over busy ones. If it's in the countryside, it must be peaceful. I'm really looking forward to it."
I said this to lighten the mood, but John just gave a hesitant hum and tilted his head, as if he didn't want me to get my hopes up too much. But for me, it was the place where the person I love lived. Just the thought of it filled me with excitement. We drove for over an hour after entering the neighboring county. Heading into a dark bamboo grove, nothing like the peaceful countryside I had imagined. Finally, we stopped at a place that felt eerily like an abandoned site.
"We're here. This is my house,"
he said, stopping in what seemed like a garage surrounded by rubble. In front of us was an old house that looked over 100 years old. This house is?
Yes, this is my place. It's a bit old but well built.
I stood there, mouth agape, looking around. The large property with its small, wooden single-story building. I naively thought that we would move after getting married. However, John's next words took me by surprise.
Come on in. This is going to be our home from now on, so don't be shy.
What? We would live in this house forever once we got married? I asked John, feeling faint.
We're going to live here? It seems like it's almost a 2-hour drive from my office. What? Hazel, you can quit your job after we're married. My earnings are more than enough for us to live on.
I was shocked by John's unexpected words. We had talked about our jobs before, but he never mentioned wanting me to quit after marriage.
But I told you I love my work. Why would you decide on your own that I should quit?
I questioned, but John, looking puzzled, answered.
Well, isn't it normal for a woman to stop working and take care of the home once she marries a man with a good income? My mother did the same, so I thought you'd understand without me having to say it.
I stood there, wide-eyed and stunned. I was shocked to encounter a man with such old-fashioned beliefs in this day and age. This place was far from both my company and my family's home. I'm currently living with my mom at our family home, so moving so far away would be quite inconvenient. I wanted to discuss this, but at that moment, my mind went blank and I couldn't find the words to say. And then there's this house. Sure, it's an old house, so it's well built, but there are places where the walls are crumbling, and the floors creak as you walk. The bathroom and toilet are outdated, and there aren't many rooms, which would be inconvenient if we had kids. Can we really live in such a house forever? Seeing my worried expression, John tried to reassure me. It's okay. It might take some getting used to at first, but there's something great about traditional American houses. You'll start to feel comfortable in no time. I wanted to say that wasn't the issue, but I couldn't find the words. For the time being, I decided not to say anything and asked to be taken home before it got too late.
You could stay over, it's far.
John casually suggested, but I was not in the mood to stay. That night, I lay in bed early, thinking under the covers. That's right, even if we live in John's family home at first, we can always move later. I've been working for a long time and have some savings, and surely John has enough to build a new home. I plan to discuss this with him next time. On my next day off, I brought up the idea of a new home with John. However, he didn't seem too keen on it.
Why? It's a waste to move when we already have a house.
To John, living in his own house was the only thing on his mind. Was I being unreasonable to care about convenience to my workplace and my family home? I felt a surge of irritation. Nevertheless, I didn't come to dislike John, and we went ahead with the wedding. Being the owner of a construction company, our wedding was grand. Of course, Mary attended too. Mary, flashy and looking young, stood out at the venue, attracting a lot of attention from the men. Even John, the groom, asked, "Is that beautiful woman Hazel's best friend?" Despite being the bride, I felt a tinge of jealousy towards Mary. The wedding went off without a hitch, and our married life began. John was comfortable living in his familiar home. I reluctantly quit my job and settled into home life, but I felt somewhat uneasy. So, I had made a plan. Then, one day, I received a phone call from the hospital where my mom goes. She had fallen ill suddenly and was admitted to the hospital. I rushed there and entered her room.
"Mom, are you okay?" "Hazel, I'm sorry to worry you."
Her complexion was not good. After talking to the doctor, it seemed her condition wasn't great, and she would need a long-term hospital stay. I went back home for a while to be with my mom. I packed my things and told John that I would be away for some time to take care of her. But John didn't seem too concerned about her. "Oh, is that so? Well, take your time." I frowned at John's nonchalant reaction. My mom's condition wasn't good, and I was there to take care of her, but John spoke as if I was just going back home for fun. Yet, when he saw my expression, he looked annoyed. "What? Why the sour face?" Did I say something wrong? No, it's nothing. Thinking about it, John grew up as a rich kid. So expecting him to be considerate was probably too much to ask for. So, without saying anything more, I quickly returned to the hospital. It's been almost 3 months since my mom was hospitalized. Her condition is still the same, and she needs my constant presence. What bothers me more is that John hasn't visited even once. Maybe he's still holding a grudge because I frowned at his words. If that's the case, it's pretty childish. My mom, lying in her hospital bed, looked at me with concern.
Hazel, is John all right? You don't need to worry about me. Why don't you go home for a bit? It's okay, Mom. I do go home occasionally.
I reassured her, not wanting to worry her further, but in reality, I was anxious. For the first month or so, I indeed went back home to check things. But John was sullen and hardly spoke to me. After doing some household chores, I would just return to the hospital. Gradually, I started to feel like John was managing on his own and that I wasn't needed at home. Lying awake at night while my mom slept, I wondered if things were okay this way. Months passed, with me lost in thought. Then, I got a call. It was from Mary when I checked my phone. Hello? Hazel, it's been a while. Just thought I'd check how you're doing.
Mary, it really has been a long time. How have you been?
I felt my spirits lift hearing Mary's voice after so long. However, I sensed a slight hesitation in her response. I'm fine. Okay. I replied, feeling the mood turn a bit heavy and unsure of what to say next. Then Mary broke the silence. Hey, when are you coming back home next? Huh? I was puzzled. I hadn't told Mary that I was away taking care of my mom. Yet, I wondered why she would ask such a thing. Nevertheless, since she had called after such a long time, I calmly asked back.
What's up, Mary? Did you call for something specific?
Oh? No, nothing in particular. Just wanted to hear your voice. As we talked, I heard a familiar male voice in the background calling, Hey, Mary. She abruptly exclaimed, and hurriedly ended the call. That voice, could it be? I felt a chill run down my spine. It had been over 3 months since I stopped going back home. A bad feeling started creeping in, so I decided to go home the next day. The next day, after the morning rounds at the hospital, I hurried back to my house. It was Sunday, so John should be home. When I arrived, I saw a bright red sports car parked in the garage, where my car was supposed to be. This car, it looked familiar. As I unlocked the front door and entered, I saw stylish high heels at the entrance. It seemed my hunch was right.
John! Are you here?
I called out from the entrance, and John came out, looking surprised.
Hazel! Why did you come back so suddenly? You should have called. Why? These shoes and the car in the garage. They're Mary's, aren't they?
Well. Mary just happened to stop by. John tried to explain, clearly flustered. Then Mary, wearing a casual jumpsuit-style dress, came out from the back.
Don't come out,
John said to her, but Mary looked unfazed.
Why not? We have to talk about it sooner or later.
Mary seemed to have given up hiding it. She stood there boldly, not showing any signs of remorse. It was unusual for the usually fashionable Mary to wear such a simple, ankle-length dress. As I thought about how her dress resembled a maternity dress, Mary revealed a surprising fact. I'm pregnant. Don't bother coming back.
What?
Didn't you hear me? I'm pregnant with John's baby.
That can't be.
Mary stood defiantly as she said this, while John sighed and looked down. Maybe he wished I had heard this in a more calm state. It's your fault, Hazel. You left your husband alone while taking care of your mother. You brought this on yourself, Mary said triumphantly. But I didn't flinch. Seeing my calm demeanor, Mary pouted and said, What's with the act? I heard you didn't like this house. I'm fine with it, though. The old house has a large yard, no nosy neighbors, and most importantly, John is kind and wealthy. John, maybe feeling emboldened by being praised, suddenly changed his attitude. I fell for Mary at first sight at the wedding. So, I thought I'd ask you to leave since you dislike this house, and I'd live with Mary. Exactly, and John even looked up my contact from the guest list and called me. He said you weren't coming back and asked me to come over. I was hesitant at first, but how could I say no when he needed me so much? Ah, I see. I replied nonchalantly to Mary's boastful story. Humph. You're just pretending to be strong. You must be upset. I'll say it again, I'm pregnant with John's baby. Don't come back here anymore. As Mary said this, I smiled and decided to take her up on her offer. Really? I'd be happy to. My unexpected reaction left both John and Mary stunned. Hazel, what are you saying? Aren't you mad that I cheated? Well, I was surprised at first, but I'm not really mad. Besides, I already have a new house. A new house? What are you talking about? John looked bewildered, so I explained further. Actually, I've been looking for a new house ever since we got married. Sure, we could live in this house at first, but what about when we have kids? There are no schools around here. Mary's face showed a sudden realization. She probably hadn't thought about schools when she got pregnant. Why didn't you discuss such an important matter with me? Because you said you didn't want to move from here. So, I went to real estate agents and looked online by myself. But now, it's none of your concern. What do you mean? John asked, still clueless. He seemed not to grasp that after his affair and getting her pregnant, it was impossible for us to move together. I continued speaking calmly, despite my thoughts. You cheated and even got her pregnant, so just stay in this house with Mary. You're well off, so you can send the kid to a distant private school and drive them every day. As I spoke, John nodded as if he understood. Mary, surprised by my calm demeanor, asked, Hazel, you're unusually agreeable. How come you're accepting my relationship with John so easily? Well, I just can't trust John anymore. He never once visited my mom, who's been hospitalized for a long time. So, I decided to live with my mom in the new house. I've arranged for home nursing care through the hospital. Are you really not mad about the affair? You won't get back at me later? John asked, still only thinking about himself. He was the epitome of a sheltered person, raised in a pampered environment. Don't worry. I'm not that sneaky. I replied with a slight smile. I knew that I didn't need to punish them, they would face their own disaster soon enough. Then John and I got divorced. After the divorce, I moved to our new house with my mom. The house was made barrier-free, so my mom could recuperate in peace. It was close to the hospital, so help was quickly available, which reassured me. John was living in the old house with Mary, starting their married life. Mary's belly grew, but there were no nearby hospitals. John had to drive her for over an hour for checkups. They could have had a happy marriage under normal circumstances. After a while, John called me. Hey! Why do we have to leave the house? I thought, so, the day has finally come. Did your uncle come? Yeah, he did. Did you know and hide it from me? John's uncle was his father's younger brother. Oh? John, you should have known. The house is owned by your uncle. Ah. Apparently, John had forgotten that and had been living there as if it was his own. I had learned during a visit to John's relatives before our marriage that his father, on his deathbed, entrusted the house to his brother, John's uncle. Apparently, even though John was the heir, he was considered too unreliable to inherit the property. In essence, John was living there with his uncle's consent. I completely forgot about that. But yesterday, my uncle suddenly came and said, I had told your wife we're selling this land. Why didn't you tell me something so important? Hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh inside, thinking, John's uncle is quite an actor. I had told the uncle everything that led to our divorce. He was furious and promised to give John a piece of his mind. I'm sorry. When I was about to tell you about the house being sold, you got Mary pregnant. I thought, maybe I should leave it to you guys to figure things out. But it's okay, isn't it? You're financially well off, so you can move anywhere, right? About that. John's voice suddenly became gloomy. I knew what he was about to say, but pretended not to and asked. What happened? I've been demoted from my position as president. My uncle said I was unreliable, and the employees wouldn't follow me. He told me to start over as an ordinary employee, so my salary will be cut in half. Oh, really? I said, but I already knew all of this from John's uncle. Mary is furious. She wanted to remodel the house into a spacious mansion. She hasn't spoken to me since last night when she heard we had to leave the house and my salary was reduced. What should I do? John sounded almost tearful. It was clear that Mary was with him for the money. Well, I can't help you with that anymore, so you'll have to figure it out yourself. What? Wait. John tried to hold me back, but I nonchalantly ended the call. The next moment, Mary called. I didn't want to answer, knowing what she would probably say, but I figured she would keep calling persistently. So, reluctantly, I picked up. Mary's voice came out like a torrent. What's the meaning of this, Hazel? It's your fault. I thought I married a rich man. Her words were as expected. Well, that's not my concern anymore. John is a kind husband to you, isn't he? It's not like he's unemployed. I can't accept this. You knew, didn't you? That we had to leave the house. And you kept quiet. That's so unfair. What would have happened if I had told you earlier? You would have left John if you couldn't have your ideal life. That's not fair to the baby, is it? Mary had no reply to that. Whatever your situation, you're starting a family now. You need to pull yourself together. After telling her that, I quickly ended the call. I had no resentment left for losing John. I just realized I had no eye for men. John and Mary were forced to move and apparently went to live with Mary's parents. Her parents were angry at her for marrying John, but they welcomed them for the sake of their unborn grandchild. Years later, one day, John and Mary, along with their child, showed up at my place. I hadn't told them where I moved, but they had followed me from town and found out. I wondered why they went to such lengths. Hazel, are you there? We were nearby for our child's kindergarten admission results and thought to drop by. Mary said pretentiously as she barged in. Still flamboyant in makeup and fashion, even as a mother. I didn't want to meet her, but I didn't know what she would say if I was rude, so I humored her. As always, huh? So, how did it go? I asked, not really interested, but knowing she would say something anyway. Listen to this. Our child got into the top kindergarten in the area. So you came to brag? Well, congratulations. She had clearly come just to show off. That's right. This child is excellent, just like his father. Plus, he's got my good looks, so he made a great impression at the interview. Mary continued bragging on and on. Oh, that's nice for you. I replied sarcastically. Mary didn't seem to like my tone and glared at me. Really, I thought I was going to see hell because of someone, but now we're a happy family. Having a family and getting married is great, isn't it, John? Yeah, that's right. John finally spoke up, standing quietly behind her. Their son, who indeed resembled Mary, looked at me with a snooty expression. Seemingly inheriting not only her looks, but also her prideful character. So, the top kindergarten is... Ahaha. Hazel, being single, you wouldn't know about kindergartens, right? It's Wilson Kindergarten nearby. Mary said disdainfully, and I immediately retorted. Single? I'm already remarried. John and Mary looked shocked. You're lying. Isn't this house where you live with your mother? Yes, but I live here with my husband too. At that moment, my husband Thomas appeared. Are these guests? Please, come in. You are. They exclaimed in surprise upon seeing Thomas. Thomas recognized them and said,
"Ah, you must be the parents of Michael who came for the interview the other day."
You were the interviewer?
"Yes, I apologize for not introducing myself earlier. I am Thomas Wilson, the principal of Wilson Kindergarten. You're Hazel's friends, I see. She's always been so helpful." John and Mary were stunned to learn Thomas was the principal of the kindergarten.
Wait, you, the principal of the kindergarten, are Hazel's husband?
Yes, that's right.
I can't believe someone like you married the principal of a prestigious private kindergarten. Where did you meet someone like that?
Mary sneered at me. But I had worked hard to change from my past, so I wasn't someone for Mary to look down upon anymore.
We met through work. My company was contracted for the kindergarten's reconstruction project.
Yes, I was impressed by how hard she worked, so I was the one who initiated our relationship. Thomas added sheepishly.
Right, let me introduce you properly. This is my ex-husband, John, and his wife Mary, my former best friend who took him from me.
Hey, don't introduce us like that. That's right. Don't say such things in front of the child.
The two of them, facing the principal of the kindergarten their child was about to join, looked embarrassed and flustered. It was, after all, a prestigious private kindergarten with a distinguished history. The revelation of their family's complicated circumstances must have been unsettling. Mary nervously asked Thomas.
So, about the admission. Is it cancelled?
In response to Mary's question, Thomas tilted his head slightly with a stern look but then returned to his usual expression and replied, "Let's see how your child does in the kindergarten environment."
So, he's admitted?
John and Mary looked relieved. However, it seemed John and Mary still didn't understand how challenging life at the kindergarten could be. Their experience there turned into a disaster. The reason? It was a kindergarten that had strong parent connections. Any negative rumor spreads quickly. So, the gossip that Mary stole my ex-husband, the principal's wife's, quickly reached everyone's ears and spread like wildfire. Given that most parents in our kindergarten are keen on strict education, John and Mary were quickly isolated from the other parents. Such parental behavior also affects the children. Poor Michael, innocent in all this, became isolated from his friends and cried daily, saying he wanted to quit kindergarten. Eventually, they had to leave the kindergarten, and John's family disappeared from our lives. Later, Thomas heard from another kindergarten principal that John's family had to enroll Michael in a public kindergarten. But the same rumors spread there too, as many locals attended. John and Mary's situation in the local community worsened. Before I knew it, they had left Michael at home and gone somewhere far away. Recently, I've heard that Mary's parents attend kindergarten events and pickups. Being well liked by the neighbors, and ensuring Michael can attend kindergarten comfortably. Even Mary's once indulgent parents seem to have given up on her, choosing to raise Michael themselves. I was worried about Michael but felt relieved hearing this from Thomas. After a while, Mary's parents came to apologize for everything. "I'm truly sorry for the late apology. We wanted to bring Mary along, but she absolutely refused to come." "What? Mary is back at your house?" I was surprised to hear Mary was back at her parents' house. I thought she and John were missing. According to her parents, unable to endure their impoverished life, John and Mary divorced, and only Mary returned home. However, she was not welcomed by Michael, who couldn't see her as a mother anymore. Time passed, and I gave birth to our long-awaited daughter. I made many mom friends at the local maternity hospital. Though I cut a tie with a childhood friend, I now spend enjoyable times with moms in similar situations. Thomas, taking paternity leave, is an excellent father. I feel incredibly happy now, maybe the happiest I've ever been. I plan to enjoy parenting, surrounded by a loving family and good friends. Like my mother, who raised me alone, I want to shower my daughter with love. Even if there was a time when I, like myself, took a wrong turn, I will trust my daughter, believe in my family and the people around me, and most importantly, have faith in myself. As a mother, I vow to live strongly and lovingly from now on.